The Bible is the only true holy book. Massive claim. How can you back it up?
Well, I think I can back it up with several lines of evidence.
All right, let's see it.
The first is that the Bible contains perfectly fulfilled prophecy, and only God can tell the future. Mankind can't.
There's not a single thing in the Bible that can be demonstrated to even be plausibly perfectly fulfilled prophecy. There are only things that people choose to believe are perfectly fulfilled prophecy that the data indicate are ex eventu prophecies, or are things that happened and then someone writing after they happened pretended to be writing from before they happened. And that happens all over the world in all kinds of different literature, but there's an awful lot of it in the Bible. And then you also have the New Testament, where people are telling stories about Jesus long after he died, and telling the stories in a way that have him fulfilling things that they understand from the Hebrew Bible to be prophecy, and sometimes even when they weren't originally written as prophecy at all, but were later translated into Greek in a way that makes them sound like prophecy, or were just interpreted as prophecy by the people telling these stories about Jesus.
Secondly, its historical record is consistent with what we can observe in the world around us.
This is entirely false. There are numerous places where the Bible makes historical claims that either conflict with or are outright precluded by the historical and the archaeological data. We don't get narrative prose in alphabetic writing until about the middle of the 9th century BCE. And so any historical narrative from before that time period is something that was written in or after the 9th century BCE. So pretty much everything telling stories prior to King David are social memories, are legends, are things that were written down from oral tradition many, many centuries later and are not supported by the data. Once we get to about the Omride kingdom and after, the broad historical outlines tend to be more accurate. So who was ruling, who they were fighting with, things like that. But a lot of the details of these stories are not supported by the data, and none of the miracles or the claims to prophecy are supported by any data. So no, the Bible is not consistent in that regard. It is incredibly inconsistent.
Thirdly, there's an amazing unified thread of meaning that runs from the beginning to the end, and the authors could not possibly have collaborated. 40 different authors over 1,600 years.
Any such thread of meaning must be read into the text. If you allow each author's text to operate on their own terms, they mean very, very different things. It's only once they've all been brought together and we impose the presupposition of univocality, this unifying framework that compels us to find consistent meaning throughout, that we then create that meaning for the text itself. There are no data that support the notion somebody was guiding a single thread of meaning from beginning to end. That is simply a dogma that a person must choose or not choose to accept.
Fourthly, it's inerrant, which is a mark of God superintending the process of writing the Bible.
The Bible is not inerrant. It makes numerous errors of fact, of history, of logic. There are absolutely no data whatsoever that support the notion of inerrancy. This is another dogma that one just chooses to accept or not to accept.
But finally, the message of the Bible has the power to transform human lives like nothing else.
Many books, whether they're central to a religious movement or not, have the power to transform lives in many and different ways. There are absolutely no data whatsoever that indicate anything about the Bible is unique in this regard.